Today I'm going to talk about how Sherri Rasmussen was killed. Sherri was born on February 7, 1957, to Nels Rasmussen and Loretta Rasmussen. She was born in Walla Walla, Washington, but she and her two sisters, Connie, who was older than her, were raised by their parents in Washington and Arizona's Tucson, and they were a very close family. Nels was a dentist who ran his own business, and Loretta worked there full-time as a manager. Things went pretty well for them. All through her life, people knew Cheryl to be a very kind, caring, and gentle girl. Tucson's Seventh-day Adventist Elementary School was where she went to school. She was smart and worked hard from the start. People who knew her said they never had to tell her to study or do her homework because she always did it. She finished elementary school a year early, so she did all of her work for grade 7 during the summer breaks of grade 6. After that, she went to high school at Thunderbird Adventist Academy. Emily, her best friend from high school, said she was always happy. Although she was very smart, she also seemed like a very serious person. She always thought she wasn't doing enough, or that she could be doing more. She got into a La Sierra College in California after graduating from high school. She started there in September 1973, when she was only 16 years old. She had an older sister named Connie who was already in college to become a nurse, and her great-aunt was also a very successful nurse. She looked up to both of them then, and when she was a freshman in college, she decided she also wanted to become a nurse. At the end of her first year, she chose to apply to Loma Linda's nursing program because that's where her sister Connie was going to school. It was okay with her. The school year began in the fall of 1974, and she and Connie graduated at the same time in June 1977. In September 1978, she decided to go to UCLA to get her master's degree in nursing. To help pay for school, she worked as a staff nurse at their medical center. Not only did she have a lot of classes, but she also had to work as a nurse during the day, which was a very intensive form of training. And I'm sure she was really tired at the end of each day. She got through it, though, and in March 1980, when she was only 23, she got her master's degree from UCLA. This made her a certified cardiovascular clinical nurse specialist. In August of that year, her dad bought her a condo unit 2 or 5 in the Balboa townhomes in Van Nuys. She lived there with her cat Bowser and eventually became roommates with Jane, one of her best friends from UCLA Medical Center. Even though her dad paid for it, she really wanted to be on her own financially. She wasn't going to depend on them. She wrote him a check every month for the full amount of the mortgage that he was going to pay that month. The complex was also pretty safe. The whole complex was surrounded by a wall that was about 6 feet high. Then, you needed a signed little key card to get in, whether you walked in or drove in. She was hired by the Glendale Adventist as director of critical nursing when she was only 27 years old because she had a master's degree. Because of this, she was killing it at work. Then, not long after that, she met the man she would marry. The girl hadn't been interested in dating much before that because she was too busy with work. It was May 1984, though. A friend of hers, Anita, invites her to a party with her fiancé and a bunch of his friends, one of whom is named John Rutten. Margaret and Richard had a son named John on September 5, 1958, in Eugene, Oregon. John had a brother named Tom and 2 sisters named Galen. Jeanette. He was a tall, good-looking guy. He grew up in San Diego, finished high school in 1977, and then went to UCLA. He earned a degree in mechanical engineering from UCLA in 1981, and then went to work as a computer engineer for Avon Products. Sherri was this tall, pretty, and smart woman. I really do mean tall. She was 6 feet tall. It looked like she was a model. John thought, wow, when he saw her from across the party room. He went over to talk to her. They got along great. He asked her friend for her number so he could call her and ask her to go on a date. He did. So she had him over to her condo and made him beef stroganoff. Oh, yummy. Still, they got along right away. John said it was like getting hitched at first sight. I don't think Sherri's family really liked John, but it was clear that she was happy. They loved each other and only wanted her to be happy. They got engaged pretty quickly. In May 1985, they got engaged. Instead of an engagement ring, they decided to get Sherri a nicer car. Jump bought her a BMW sedan in 1985. They also decided that John should move into the condo since they were getting married. Sherri told her roommate Jane that Jay had moved out on July 1st and that John had moved in soon after. Sherri also gave John Sherri ownership of the condo after Jay had moved out. After getting married at the First Congregational Church in Pasadena on November 23, 1985, they went on their honeymoon to Sandals Beach Resort in Jamaica in mid to late December. They then came back home to spend Christmas with Sherri's family in Tucson. John also quit his job at Donna Products around Christmas to work at a new company called Markopolos, which makes things like disk drives. He now had some extra hours. From 8 a.m., he was going to work until 5 p.m. He only meant that he would leave for work before Sherri did on Monday, February 24, 1986. The two of them wake up around 7 a.m. Sherri did not get out of bed the whole day. John got up and dressed for work because he had to leave around 7:30. Sherri wasn't feeling well that day, so she thought it was most likely best to skip work. She told John to call her later in the morning. He left work around 7:20 a.m. to drop off some dry cleaning, and he got to work around 7:30 a.m. It was around 10 a.m. when John tried to call Sherri. He called her again after 30 minutes, but she didn't answer. He thought she might have just gone to work. When he calls a secretary, she tells him, "You know, I haven't seen her today, but I don't normally see her on Mondays anyway because she teaches the class and just goes straight to that class, sir." But it seemed a little off since the answering machine wasn't on at home. He was unable to leave a message. She would have timed it on if she had gone to work. This is the 1980s, you know. You have to turn it on by hand. It was strange that she turned it on every time she left the house. She hadn't turned that on if she had left, and she wasn't answering her calls if she was home. Sister Teresa Shirley also called her office and got her secretary around 10 a.m. Her secretary told her that she hadn't come in that day because she called in sick. John leaves work that day around 5 p.m. On the way home, he stops at a few places to pick up his dry cleaning. He gets home around 6 p.m. and it's up to the bank. John comes home to find that the garage door is open, even though he closed it before he left. And the way that condo is set up, the front of the condo faces the street, and the garage is around the back of the condo. It's in a shared driveway, and they live right across from these two people. They also know each other well enough to say hello and talk for a while. And every day, these two people who live right across the street from them go for walks. They went for a walk around 8:30 a.m. They saw that John had closed the garage door the same way they had. When they got her back from her walk around 9:45 a.m., they saw that the garage door was open and there were no cars in it. As I already said, John gets home to find that the garage door is still up and Sherri's car is still not there. He also sees a lot of broken glass on the driveway from the patio. To go over this one more time, her condo is in the back of the house. Is that a garage? On top of that garage is a small patio with two glass doors that lead into the bedroom. Those two glass doors were broken. That's where all the glass on the driveway came from, just to give you a better idea of how this place is set up. I guess John is already shocked by this because it seems like a strange event. Also, Sherri isn't there. She always just tells him, "Hey, I'm just popping out," or something like that. He had no idea where she was either. He put his car in the garage. There is also a door in the garage that leads straight into the living room. He goes inside and finds his wife Sherri's dead body right away. She is still wearing the nightgown she was wearing during her last moments. He left, and she was found on her back. It was clear that she had been badly beaten. She had swollen eyes on both sides. You could see cuts on her head, neck, body, and face. There was also a bite mark on her left forearm. Rigid mortis was almost fully established by the time he got that. She had been there for a while. Her arms and legs were kind of off the ground because she was so stiff. John runs over to her right away, and she's stiff. He's still trying to find a pulse even though she feels cool to the touch. He wants to help her. He dials 911. Soon after, police and paramedics showed up and began collecting evidence. They carry a sexual assault kit with them. They take swabs of the bite marks. Their first step is to get fingerprints and DNA samples from the blood that is nearby the scene of the crime, since there is a lot of it. On top of the wounds I already mentioned, investigators find these cuts on her wrist, which proves that she was tied down with some kind of rope or cord. There is rope and cord right next to the front door, which they do find. She had a wound on her head that looked like the base that was broken and found next to her body. There were two broken pieces of her fingernails found near the front door. This shows that she fought very hard and that her fingernails broke. It was also found that she had been shot 3 times in the chest. This was the cause of her death, even though she had other injuries. On the back of her body, they found one exit wound. She was hit by one bullet, which went straight through her. Researchers found that the other 2 bullets she had were fired from a .38 caliber handgun at a chair in the living room. They were found inside her body. They found powder bands and a quilted blanket with 2 holes in it. From this, it was clear that this was probably used to block out the sound of the gunshots. 2 of the shots were fired very close to the victim, which means that someone would have put the quilt up to her and then fired. After that, the 3rd shot came from a long way away, like across the room. Okay, I'm going to read you some of the detectives' notes from when they got to the scene of the crime. A speaker wire and a small rope that has blood on it are lying on the entryway floor, the 2nd floor, and part of the living room rug. The front door has 2 fingernails on it. On the top floor, to the right of the front door, there is a closet door that is about a foot off the ground and covered in blood. As you go deeper inside, the wall sticks out a little more, and more smeared blood shows up near the latch socket on the wall. To the west of a light socket on the brown tile floor, there is blood on the floor just past the lock socket. There is a door to the downstairs garage that is partially open but has blood on it about halfway up the door. There was a short carpeted staircase to the 2nd floor next to the door that led to the garage. At the bottom of the stairs, there was a Sony digital disc player on top of her VCR, which was on the bottom. On top of the disc player, a bloody fingerprint shows up. Moving westward, there is a single table of this type with a lamp. The drawer on this table has been completely taken off, and some of the things inside have been dumped on the floor. Additionally, Sherri and John had just recently put in an alarm system. There was a bloody handprint near the alarm system, which showed that Sherri had attempted to set off the alarm to signal that she needed help but failed. Also, it was clear that there was a big fight going on inside the house in the living room. One of these tall stereo speakers had been completely pulled off the wall. It was just lying on the floor next to Sherri's body with all the wires pulled out. As I said, somebody broke the glass patio door and knocked over some shelves upstairs. But there were no signs that the house had been broken into. Detective Lylemeyer was in charge of this case, and he didn't do a great job. He pretty much told them, "Okay, guys, this is a failed burglary. Let's end it." There had been a few burglaries in the area in the past few months, and then, just down the road 2 months after the murder, there was another one that was very similar. This crime was done by these 2 Latino men with guns, and the situation was very much the same. They both lived in these big buildings with walls around them for safety. Both of them had the same setup at the condo. The garage door led straight into the living room. At the back of both of their heads, it looked like they were trying to steal some stereo gear. I told you about the VCR and disc player that were stacked on top of each other at the bottom of the stairs when I was at Sherri and John's suite. The police thought that they might have come here to steal the stereo equipment. They had no idea it was dangerous. When they learned Sherri was hurt, she went downstairs and asked, "What the hell is going on?" In the middle of everything, they killed her. The only thing they left behind was the car they had left there. They forgot to take all the things they had come there to steal. After 10 days, the car was found about 2.5 miles from the condo. The keys were still in the ignition. Everything looked like it had never been touched. There was one thing that was taken: the marriage certificate for John and Sherri. I'm not a detective, but I think this would be clear for me. Okay, what a strange thing to steal. In other words, why would someone need their marriage certificate? Also, it looked like the house had been set up to look like it had been broken into. It turns out that nothing was stolen. Things seemed to have been knocked over. They didn't even take any jewelry, like Sherri had a jewelry box at home. It didn't teach me anything. It seemed really odd, like, how are you going to go? I only planned to steal something, but I didn't steal anything. Anyway, the police say, okay, these 2 Latino men broke into that other house. After drawing a picture of these guys, they thought, I think that's our guys. Let us find them. That's it for now. No doubt they took a quick look at John to make it look like they were doing their jobs. I guess you have to look at your spouse every so often. But he had no reason. They had been married for 3 months and were very happy. Besides that, John had a perfect excuse because the day before, on their 3rd anniversary, they bought 3 roses for each month. He worked all day. This could be found by many people. Nels and Loretta Sherri were told about the murder around 1 a.m., and Nels, Sherri's father, told her right away, "You need to check out John's ex-girlfriend." He had no idea what her name was. Sherri had only ever called him Sherri. They were getting really close now. During their daily phone calls, they talked about a lot of things. Sometimes, she brought up John's crazy ex-girlfriend. She was also a police officer in Los Angeles. When he told the police about this, they told him straight out to stop watching so much TV. The woman John used to be with was really crazy, so let me tell you a little about her. Stephanie Lazarus was her name. I also said that she was an LAPD officer. She was born in Santa Monica on May 4th, 1960. Her parents were Shelton and Carol. John was a sophomore at UCLA when she met him, and Stephanie was a freshman. They both lived in Dexter Hall on the top floor. A lot of people on this floor became friends. Stephanie played sports. Being on the junior varsity basketball team was fun for her. Sometimes she pulled jokes on people, and she was a very friendly person. And as far as I could tell, Stephanie and John had very different ideas about what kind of relationship they had. John didn't seem to notice that Stephanie liked him a lot. He also believed they were very good friends. During college, they kissed a few times but never had sex. They took trips to San Diego together. Stephanie became very close with John's mother Margaret, his brother Tom, and his sister Janet. Not everyone in John's family agreed on what their relationship was, though. I already told you that John graduated from UCLA in 1981 and found an apartment in Canada Park. Then, the summer after he graduated, he slept with Stephanie for the first time. Stephanie graduated with a degree in political science and sociology in 1982. They kept hanging out after she graduated. About twice or 3 times a month, they saw each other. They would sometimes have sex. They would sometimes go on trips together. Stephanie would sometimes spend the night at John's. After graduating from UCLA, Stephanie joined the LAPD. There, she learned how to be a police officer and then bought a new commander. He got his brother Tom and John to help him move in and paint the whole place. They seemed to be pretty close. Stephanie surprised him with a party for his 25th birthday. John is seeing other people the whole time. He's been seeing other people the whole time because he thinks Stephanie and he are just friends who hang out sometimes and go on dates, but nothing serious happens. He always gets into trouble with Stephanie again because of this. He thought it was clear that they were just friends, so he never bothered to talk to her or ask her what she thought about the relationship. He thought it was so clear that it was like being friends with benefits. Stephanie was well aware that he didn't feel the same way about her as she did about him. She was always telling her friends how upset she was about it and writing about it in her journal and other things. Still, she didn't tell John about it. Stephanie is heartbroken when she learns that John and Sherri are getting married on June 4th, 1985. She had been hoping that she and John would get together one day. You can read what she wrote in her diary the day she found out we didn't do much. "I didn't really want to work. I learned that John was getting married. I felt really sad. It was really bad. I could not concentrate at all." That night, Stephanie calls John. It makes her cry. She says, "I need to see you so badly. Could you please come over?" John agrees too. Don't forget that it's still June 1985. John and Sherri haven't moved in together yet. For sure, John doesn't tell Sherri that he's going to see Stephanie when he gets to Stephanie's house. I don't think Sherri knows about Stephanie. She was crying still. He hasn't been up in 7 years and has never seen her that upset. As she says, "I love you," she starts to tell him she loves him. "I've loved you all along. I also couldn't let you get married without telling you." John was sure he understood the situation well. They were just friends. He told Stephanie that he didn't agree with her. Stephanie said, "Okay, but can I sleep with you one more time?" John agrees, so that's where he sleeps. In order to explain himself, he says, "You know, I feel really bad that she doesn't have any closure. It's my fault if I just sleep with her. She can get some closure." I don't know if he's engaged by now. I think it's all a bit shady. Although you don't feel the same way about this girl, you've been sleeping with her for 7 years. She feels the same way about you, and she knows that she won't be the one to break up with you because she likes you. It seems rude to keep sleeping with her without making things very clear. You cheated on your fiancé, but I'm getting off track. Now let's go back a month or two to July or August 1985. Stephanie chooses to visit Sherri at work at the Glendale Adventist Medical Center on one of her days off. If you remember, she's wearing something very revealing, like these very small sports shorts and a very small tank top. She asks Sherri, who is her secretary, but she's not. She's having lunch. She waits, and when she sees Sherri come back, she asks, "Hey, can we have a little chat?" They shut the door to Sherri's office and stay there for a few minutes. Stephanie then leaves, leaving Sherri alone in the office. After a while, she comes out, and it's clear that she's been crying. Her secretary said it was clear she was upset, and she chose to go home even though it was only noon because she was so upset. That night, Sherri calls her parents. She tells them what took place. She told them that John had come to see her in the hospital and that she had told him, "If I can't have him, no one can." She promised that she would be there to pick up the pieces if their marriage fell apart. She also told them that she was wearing a very sexy outfit with Sherri because she wanted to show off how fit and athletic she was. Now, I could tell that Sherri was heartbroken and angry about everything. She told John everything about Stephanie's visit when she got home, plus something she hadn't told her parents. Stephanie had told her that John had gone to her apartment and had sex with her. John said they did have sex. He told her he was sorry and not to let it ruin what they had. If she broke up with him, would she really be ruining what you two have? Or would it have been you sleeping with her? In any case, he begged Sherri to forgive him. He didn't talk to Stephanie again after she forgiven him. He didn't even call her to talk about what happened at the hospital. After some time, on August 6th, Stephanie sent a letter to John's mom that said John's mom. She wrote to her. To be fair, John's mom did send her a lot of fast messages and a few photos, but she didn't feel like she could answer. She was really upset about John. "I'll read you this letter. Runs of damage. I'd like to say thanks for the pictures. It took me so long to answer because I needed to get stronger. For now, I have no idea when or if I will see you or your family again. There are some things I want you to know. I love John very much, and the past year has been very hard for me. It was a bad ending for me, and I'll never understand why John made the choice he did. I really want you to know how much your family has meant to me. It's been a pleasure getting to know your family. I hope to one day care about something as much as they do. Please get in touch with me if you ever need anything. Always love, Stephanie." Also, tell your husband and Janet hello. That's not the end of it, though. It gets even stranger when Stephanie shows up at Sherri and John's condo without warning or invitation, sometime between December 1985 and January 1986. "John, oh John," she says, "please wax my skis for me." She brings a pair of skis. That night, Sherri told her dad that she was very uncomfortable and that Stephanie stayed longer than she would have liked. She also said that John wasn't brave enough to ask Stephanie to leave, so Sherri had to do it. John took the skis even though she told him not to. Then she told him not to look at the skis, but he did. He told her, "I just waxed skis. That's the end of it. She will never come back to us." I'm not sure if he really thought he was dumb or if he's just a piece of crap. I'm not sure. The following week, Stephanie shows up again without being asked. Sherri was honestly confused by how easy it was for her to get to their condo since they lived in a gated complex. She didn't tell him she was coming. You had to have a key card to enter. She didn't understand how Stephanie could just show up. Sherri said this was just a quick visit. She left after getting the skis. And Nell thought about this later, though he didn't know it at the time. When he looked back, though, he thought, maybe she wasn't there just to see John or get her skis waxed. She might have been there to get a feel for where John and Sherri lived and start setting up the place. Also, Sherri never told her dad the name of Stephanie. She always just called her John's ex-girlfriend. Now she's telling the police to look into her ex-girlfriend. "I know she works for the LAPD. She's not someone I know. Just tell John to go check out this woman." Anyhow, that wasn't the last time I saw Stephanie, unfortunately. I'm sorry. That was some other time. It was the middle of the week in January. John started his new job right away, and Sherri stayed home a little later than she usually would before going to work. He then went to work. Then, around 10 a.m., Stephanie just shows up in the living room of the house. She didn't hear and had no idea how she got in. She was also dressed in uniform. She looked like she was on a break at work, which is why Sherri was like, "What the frig?" Stephanie said, "Oh, I'm here to see John and Cher." It meant, Leave my house and don't come back." Poor Sherri told her dad that John didn't have the guts to stand up to her, which is really sad. Sherri Nails did say that she might report the incident, but Charles was afraid that it would make things worse. He thought that if she went to the LAPD and said, "Hey, one of your officers is bothering me," they would laugh at her. It's really sad that she had to feel that way. The LAPD is a lot like that. They look out for their own. They look out for their own people. That's why she felt that way. But it's too bad she had to. Sherri told her parents that she thought someone was following her around. They were out to dinner, and that was just one incident. On a Friday night, John and Sherri. It happened in this kind of open-plan restaurant, and she saw someone just staring at her. When the person saw that Sherri had seen them, they moved to a different spot. She then told her dad that it was someone dressed like a boy, which is something you wouldn't say if it was a boy. That makes me think that the person following them was a woman. Also, them getting these calls out of the blue around the time John moved into Sherri's apartment. It seemed like someone would call them once a week for a few months to say that she was fired. When they called her, no one would answer, so they would hang up. They never found out who it was. On top of all that, Stephanie had a roommate named Michael Hargraves right around the corner. She talked to him all the time about all of this and how much she liked John. She told John she loved him, and John was the same as her. Okay, she was very picky because she wanted a man like John who was tall, fit, and good-looking. One night, she cried and said that she was so upset because John had dumped her. Also, she told him about the time she went to see Sherri in the hospital and told her she wasn't very pretty. He moved out 2 weeks before that. It was sweet and lovely, oh, New York 7? After all of these events and analyses, like, please just look into the ex-girlfriend. We don't believe this was a break-in. The police asked, "Did you hear from?" "I don't hear anything." Stephanie is never questioned by Detective Meyer. In those case notes, he doesn't write her name down. He doesn't write down the many times that Nels and John have brought her to their attention, and he never thinks about her coming back. One more thing that the LAPD use in all of their murder investigations is a document called the Coroner the Chronological Log. It also keeps track of everything that is being investigated day by day, and sometimes minute by minute. It tells you almost everything you need to know about a case. If a detective leaves their job, another detective has to take over the case, no matter what. There is everything in this file. In the end, these papers are usually typed up, but they always keep the handwritten copy too. An interesting fact about this case is that they lost the handwritten original of the first 3 months of the coroner's report. They were all lost, if you will. And 2 months after that, there is a break-in. To be honest, Chrono is mostly just about that, and looking for these 2 people they think broke in. Out of all of these case notes, this is the only one that talks about Stephanie. It says that John Rutten called Stephanie Lazarus a verified PR was ex-girlfriend. The case kind of goes cold after this. It's not even close, but they don't really look into it because, well, it was about work. Over the next few years, the Rasmussens keep in touch with the LAPD to find out what's going on with their daughter's case. In fact, Detective May, who was in charge of the case, retired in 1993. They thought, yes, maybe we can get somewhere and find someone who cares about the case at about the same time. It's coming out all of this near DNA testing tech. It's this huge thing. A lot of old cases are being looked into again instead of being solved. That makes her feel great now. In his daughter's case, he hopes that DNA testing will help them find a new clue or something. So he sets up a time to meet with the new types working on the case. When they do, they tell him that there have been no new leaks. This is a break-in. We don't have enough money to test DNA. We don't have any more suspects, so we can't test the DNA again. I'll pay for it, they say now. I'll pay for the DNA test. They say, no thanks, I'm not interested. In short, they told him to move on with his life. The case stopped being active again. John and Stephanie end up getting back together after a few years. Before they leave, John calls the detectives working on the case and says, "Hey, I just want to make sure that Stephanie's case isn't linked to mine and my wife's. In other words, there's no chance that she was involved. To clear your name, if you think she did it enough to call the police, then you probably know you shouldn't be doing this anyway. They went scuba diving in Hawaii with some college friends. You might think that what they are doing is a little strange. Besides that, they slept together twice after Sherri died. It's not like they were in a relationship or anything. They lost touch. Stephanie married another LAPD officer, Scott Young, in 1996, and the two of them adopted a daughter. John also got married, had kids, and moved on with his life. You know what? If I were Sherri, I'd be haunting them from beyond the grave. I think I would have left my partner if they caused me all that pain in my relationship. It's over if I didn't do any of those things, and the person who did them caused me a lot of pain in our relationship. My husband could also end up getting with them after I'm dead. Stephanie really makes a name for herself a lot in the years after Sherri died. She moves up in the LAPD and is a very respected officer. The first job she had was at DAD, which is the Drug Abuse Resistance Education Department. She gives talks in schools and was even on an episode of Family Feud that was like a week-long showcase of the best of American. After that, she worked in the Internal Affairs Unit, which looks into fellow officers to see if they are corrupt or doing anything else bad. That's what I mean by irony, right? Since 2008, she has worked for the LAPD's Department of Off Theft and Fraud, which is part of the Commercial Division. It's a position with a lot of attention. There's a lot of attention and press. Stephanie had never been in a disciplinary hearing at work. 2 times, she had been named Detective of the Year, and everyone looked up to her. In 2001, the LAPD finally set up a cold case homicide unit. This was possible because DNA testing had finally made a lot of progress. The LAPD was given $50 million to use for DNA testing to go back and look at cases again that have enough evidence. All of these cold cases are being looked at. Also, in 2003, a detective sends some of Sherri's DNA to the crime lab to be found. As of December 2004, a lab tech named Jennifer Francis is the first person to pick it up. She then starts to look into it. Her tests on the blood and nails show that they are made of Sherri's DNA and blood. She then checks the lip swab that was taken from Sherri's bite mark. At first, she can't find it anywhere. The coroner's office had to look through those freezers for 6 hours before they found it in the back. It had been there for 18 years. Anyway, they get it. It's really not obvious. Like, they tried to get rid of all this evidence, but forgot to take this one piece out of the back of the freezer, so she sends it off to do tests. In 2005 and January 2005, she gets the results back. It's actually DNA from a woman. Then she checks it against a computerized list of criminals. It doesn't match anything, so she thinks, wow, this is really strange. So she calls the detective in charge of the case, and he tells her that it was probably just a female burglar, which may have been true. It might have been like a woman helping her male burglar. Francis has looked through the case files and noticed that the name of the same woman keeps coming up. She replies, "What about this other woman?" She is another nurse at the hospital she was interested in. She only calls her, "this other woman." There's only been one woman who keeps coming up, so she doesn't bother to say anything about the other nurse or anything else. When the detective answers, he says, "All the LAPD officer." She has nothing to do with this, though. He didn't tell Francis the name of Stephanie. Someone just told him that the victim's husband was seeing an LAPD officer on and off. Francis said, "Okay, well," because she hadn't seen anything about this police officer. The other woman wasn't even in mind when she asked about the police officer. She doesn't get much attention, and the Chrono O'Connor only has one tiny note about her. Frankie didn't even have a thought about it. I just think it's strange that when someone brings up a woman in the case, that's the first thing that comes to mind, and you dismiss it right away. I feel so shady. Anyway, he pretty much throws out the case, saying that it was probably just a woman who broke in. The case then goes cold again. The case wasn't looked into again until February 2nd, 2009, this time by a detective named Jim Nuttall. He opens this box of cold case files and finds Sherri's file. He reads the file and sees that they think 2 men are responsible for the break-in. Then he looks at the DNA that came back and grabs the females. He thought, okay, something isn't right here. Finally, a guy with common sense, right? So he tells his boss, Robber Bob, about it. Bob actually pays attention, and he adds 2 more detectives to the case, Mark Martinez and Pete Barbara. So, they start to look at the case notes and make a list of 5 women who are mentioned in the notes. They want to get rid of these women. The DNA and the saliva swab will be compared, and 3 of these women are quickly thrown out. There was a nurse named Deborah Putnam on the 4th name on the list. It was her mother, Loretta. her sister Teresa, and her roommate, Jane. She didn't get along with Sherri either. There was only one name left on the list after Sherri took her job, but they were able to get DNA from something she had thrown away and killed her. That person's name was Stephanie Lazarus. Personally, I think it's a little scary for them because, as I said, she's a very important and respected police officer. There are a lot of people she knows. They start to look into her behind her back. They work in the same building as her, right across the hall from her. They need to keep this quiet. They tell her name, which is 5. They don't leave any clues and don't talk about the case with anyone who isn't working on it. As I already said, the LAPD is having trouble keeping that urn safe and keeping things quiet for their own officers. They don't want to look bad if it turns out she wasn't involved. That kind of thing. They didn't want there to be a chance of a cover-up. As they look into it, they learn that in the mid-1980s, LAPD officers had .38 caliber guns as backups or when they weren't on duty. Also, remember that Sherri was shot with a .38 caliber gun. 3 weeks after Sherri was killed, Stephanie told the Santa Monica Police Department that a blue bag had been stolen from her car. This is when they found out that Stephanie's name was on the state gun registry. The blue bag inside has clothes, cassette tapes, and, you guessed it, a Smith & Wesson revolver with 5 shots. It seems very fishy that she didn't tell her own department about this. She only told the Santa Monica Police Department about it. It had been 13 days since Sherri's death. This does mean that the detectives can't say for sure that this is the gun that was used to kill Sherri. So getting Stephanie's is pretty important to them. Following her around for a week in the hopes that she drinks something and throws it away is what they're after. Then, on May 28, 2008, she takes her daughter to Costco. She orders pizza and soda. She puts everything in the trash can and leaves when she's done eating and drinking. As soon as she is out of sight, the police go through the trash, take out that soda cup, and send it off as evidence. It's an exact match to the saliva from the bite mark on Sherri's arm when it comes back in. Robert, Bob, and Jim Nuttall will take this case to 2 detectives who don't know Stephanie once they get this information back. Since they're close, they don't have any bias, which is very important in this case. Detectives Ogden, Miller, and Starnes will take this to the DA and make plans to get an arrest warrant for her. Then everything starts to happen on June 5, 2008. That's why they want to keep things quiet. They don't want to hold her in the middle of LAPD headquarters and cause a fuss. So, they set up this fake interview in the basement of the jail, which is where the LAPD's main office is. Furthermore, it is very smart because you have to give up your guns in order to get to the jail. That meant she wouldn't have any weapons. When they got to Stephanie, they told her, "Look, we have this guy in jail. We want to talk to him because he knows something about a theft of art. Could you help us out?" She also likes to shop. So they take her down to an empty room where they can question her because this pop who knows something about art theft is not real. They question her for more than an hour. You can watch the whole hour and a half on YouTube. If you're interested, I'll put a link to that below for you to click on. This is something I didn't want to say in court because I don't know who is listening. If you go to my site, everyone is always wondering when they should listen, okay? But, we're talking about the work we were given in a case we've been looking at. Okay, it's a new case and we're doing it. There are notes at the scene. In terms of your name, you said. Okay, that's fine. Know anyone named John Rudin? John? Does John Rutten? Yes, of course. We went to the same school and lived together in the dorms for 2 years. You all lived in the same dorm. Okay, fine. I agree. Dykstra. Were you two just friends or something? Yes, we were good friends. There must have been some kind of relationship or something between you two. Yes. I mean, we went on dates together. So was this all about getting along with his wife? Okay. Did you know her? Not really. I knew he was married a long time ago. Have you ever met her? I have no idea. God. I might have met her. Oh no. I mean, why are you two here? Is this something? You told me I was going to talk to someone about how our business is connected to his. I mean, Stephanie, we pretty much knew that there was a connection between these two when we saw them in this chrono. From what the coroner said, it looked like that was the case, and we didn't want to talk to you at your desk or do anything else. People can see what's going on up there, right? If you went to an interview room or saw people there. Yes, because you're married to someone else and all that, We wanted to give you some privacy and secrecy to talk about this because we thought it might be something. And that you might not want to talk about these things with that person because we don't want the rumor mill, gossip, or anything like that. That's fine, I guess. I don't know. It was kind of a weird relationship. That is, we went on dates. He wasn't my boyfriend, that's for sure. I'm not sure if he would call me his girlfriend. We went on a date. Things were done. I played sports in college. He had fun with basketball. He had a brother who played basketball. It just didn't work out for us. Have you ever met his wife? Oh, I guess I'll have to. Do you remember anything about her? Like her name, what she did for a living, where she worked, or anything else? I believe she did. The way he said he met her is something I can't remember. I think she was a nurse. I mean, it's been a long time. Do you know what happened to his wife? I see what you mean. She died. What did you do? What did you learn about that? At work, I saw a sign. I'm sure I told him about it. Did he move out, but not move again after getting married? Do you know? Yes, I'm sure he did. Do you know where I lived in the valley? You didn't have any problems with her, though, right? Not at all. I mean, obviously, if he was dating both her and me, I would have said something like, hey, pick. Back then, I don't think we ever yelled at each other. He was a pretty chill guy. I guess you could say I was pretty calm. I don't think we had a big, huge argument about why we broke up or why we stopped dating. One of the things that worried me was reading some of the notes because some of Sherri's friends said that you and her were having a problem because of John. That's why I want to know what your friends think about the problems they say you were having with Sherri. I mean, it looks like the relationship is just getting worse, but I don't remember that at all. No? No. From what you say, when you two met at the hospital, you talked, but from what you remember, neither of you got angry. I mean, I'm trying to remember things, but I just can't picture the conversation. I mean, I can't even picture what they said. Okay, let me ask you. At the hospital, it never got to the point where people were telling each other to go to your own corner, or go to everyone else. I don't believe that. Not at all like that. I don't believe that. If we ask you to, please give us a buccal swab of your DNA so we can identify you or get rid of you. Are you ready to do that? I think that's where we are too because I know it to be true. Because, you know, looking at the evidence right now, it's possible that we may have found some DNA there. That's great. We are going to do everything we can to make this happen. And the people who wrote your names in the book are pointing at you for some reason. I have no idea why. That's crazy. I mean, that's just totally crazy. We should look at it because it is our duty to do so. I understand. Do you all have to do your jobs? I think someone needs to get in touch with someone. Okay, that's fine. That is, I understand how this works. I really, really, really can't believe it. That's it. We get that. I mean, in other words, we would feel the same way if we were in your shoes. I can't believe it. I'm just shocked, you know? I'm shocked that someone would say I did this and blame me. We fought, so I killed her. Really? Come on. That's Stephanie. You do have the right to be quiet. Do you get it? Yes. In court, anything you say could be used against you. Do you get it? Yes. You have the right to have a lawyer with you before and during any question. Do you get it? Yes. You can't pay for an attorney, so ask for one to be sent to you for free before you are questioned. You can if you want. Do you get it? Yes. So, you want to talk to us now? Okay. 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 This is crazy. I'm kind of shocked. That's crazy to me. Since she's a cop, they need to be very careful here. She knows what's right for her. She has been a police officer for a very long time. It's kind of like they have to act like they're just talking. They ask her, do you know John Bruton? They also get his name wrong. She says, oh, John Rutten Mellick, that's the one. They said, look, we're looking into his case. We know that he used to be your boyfriend. To be honest, we just want to learn more about the case. It made us want to ask you about it. Because this could be a touchy subject for you. We didn't want anyone to come over here and start a rumor. We're not going to interview you. You can leave whenever you want. You're not being arrested. And she didn't know that her office was waiting outside to arrest her if she left at any point. Hey, can we get a DNA sample from you? They asked right at the end of the interview. We only want to get rid of you. She gets defensive and says, wow, I can't believe you're accusing me. We tell her to take all of our boxes and do our research. Just one more thing before I give you a DNA sample. I need to talk to my lawyer. She then leaves, and they arrest her. After a few days, she is officially charged with murder. She says she is not guilty, and her bail is set at $10 million, which is way more than anyone thought it would be. But it's clear that she's a huge flight risk. Besides that, her husband works for the LAPD. So if she has all of these guns and firearms available, things could get very messy. In February 2012, her trial began on these 6 dates. Stephanie has been saying the whole time that she's not guilty. We don't really know what happened to Sherri, but the prosecution's main theory was that Stephanie broke into the house while Sherri was upstairs in her bedroom. The front door wasn't unlocked, because John couldn't remember if it was locked or unlocked, or if Stephanie had picked the locks because it was revealed in court that in the months before the murder, Stephanie was showing off all the little tools she had bought to pick locks. They learned that she had 2 books called Modern Locksmithing and The Complete Guide to Professional Locksmithing. Also, the week of the murder, she wrote something in her journal about how to pick locks. Without a doubt, this LA could explain why there was no forced entry. Regardless, she goes inside and finds Sherri in her bedroom upstairs. She then fires a gun at her, and the bullet goes straight through her and through the patio glass doors, breaking them from the inside out. This is why all the glass was on the driveway outside. After that, they have a big fight. While we don't know the exact details, the mess in the house makes us think it was something really big. Things were ripped off the walls all over the place. There was a bite mark. The nails on some of the hands have been ripped off. At some point, though, Stephanie gets her gun and uses the quote to block out the sound of the gunshots. She kills Sherri by shooting her twice in the chest. Also, I haven't told you this yet, but the bite mark on Sherri's arm was probably made while she was dying or after she had already died, which I find crazy. During the court case, she also had 3 days off when she killed Sherri, so she had a good reason to not be guilty. During the trial, it was also made clear how much wrongdoing there was. The LAPD looks out for their own, and that's what they did. They didn't talk to Stephanie. They didn't check her out. In the case notes, they didn't even write her name down. Also, if you thought she wasn't guilty, why not just talk to her and rule her out? It was clear that they thought something fishy was going on. If not, they would have worked so hard to hide her name and move on from this case. In this case, 3 months were missing from this account of events. Also, a lot of people talked about John's ex-girlfriend, but her name was only mentioned once in this tiny note. There's something wrong. They tried very hard to hide evidence in this case. They also destroyed her DNA so that it might not be able to be used to find her. It was really hard to find that vial with the saliva swab in it. It looks like they were trying to get rid of evidence, but they found it in the back of the freezer. That's why it was there for 18 years. Really, it seems like they thought she did it or knew she did it, which is why they tried. It's really tough to get her name off the case. The jury thought about the case for a little more than 24 hours. On March 8, 2012, they came back and found Stephanie Lazarus guilty of first-degree murder. A judge gave her a 27-year to life sentence in a state prison on March 11th, plus 2 extra years for personal use of a firearm. But she got more than 1,000 days off for good behavior, and time she had already served, which I don't think is good enough. It looks like she married this woman without knowing her. Stephanie filed an appeal right away, but it was turned down, and Stephanie was found guilty. Because they brought Stephanie to our attention so many times but never looked into her, the Rasmussens tried to sue the LAPD for how they handled the case. It turned out that Stephanie was guilty. They couldn't sue them after 1998, though, because of the statute of limitations. That's all the information I have about this case. Let's talk about your thoughts in the comments section below. I think this is such a crazy idea. Even though she has 27 more years to live, I still don't think it's enough. It doesn't seem fair that she got those 1,000 days of time off already served. She got away with this for more than 20 years because the police didn't want it to be one of their offices. It's so sad. This isn't some small crime, you know? This is a murder. Hey guys, I hope you have a great rest of the day. I hope to see you in my next video.